Hello, Rebecca. Okay,
Hi.
please
Oh,
could you please could you introduce yourself for everyone watching?
sure. I'm Rebecca and I'm 54 years old and I live in paradise in Cancun.
In Cancun, Mexico, which is perfect to introduce me into the main question I want to ask you, which is being born and raised in the US, which many of my students and many people from developing countries see as the epitome of freedom and opportunity and the American dream. Why would you choose to leave all of that behind and move to Mexico?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's many reasons. Some of the simple reasons are I hate the weather in Chicago, especially in the winter. That was a big one. But the climate in the United States, political climate in the United States has become almost intolerable.
Mm,
But also, I think when it's interesting that people view the United States as a place of opportunity,
mm-hmm.
and I value the opportunities that I had in the United States, but there are also a lot of drawbacks to living in the United States. And one of them is cost of living is very expensive. And the state of healthcare is not great. It's very expensive to get quality healthcare. And as a healthcare provider, I'm an occupational therapist. I was very disillusioned with the way that we delivered services to our clients. And I really felt like I just needed to get away from all of that, you know? And then the other reason I left, honestly, was I was ready to retire, but I'm not old enough to get Social Security. And the only way I could not work and afford my life was to live in a cheaper country. And Mexico was perfect for that.
So do you think the high costs, the high financial cost of living, and I do try and stress this to a lot of my students and people that I talk to, because I've lived obviously in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the US, in developed countries. And the cost of living in those developed countries is very high. And I don't think that they realize that, they think that earning a good salary means that even if rent and everything else is high, that they will be fine, but they don't realize the extent of how much higher those additional services are in comparison to what they're paying where they are now. And I don't discourage anybody from chasing a dream. My God, I've lived in 7 countries, and I encourage people to do it, at least so that your curiosity is satisfied.
Sure.
But do you think that finances is the main reason that Americans choose to move to Mexico?
Yes, I do. I think it's very frustrating when you consider my line of work. I would consider myself a very successful person.
Mm-hmm.
I made enough money that I was able to only work 32 hours a week.
Right.
And I made a good salary.
Mm-hmm.
But even though I made a good salary, I was never able to save money.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to go on, expensive vacations. I literally lived paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And then, God forbid, for most people, especially in a big city like Chicago, it is almost cost prohibitive to be able to buy property there.
Right.
And I was lucky that I started buying property when I was younger, when it was cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into the market early. But when I look at the prices of some like 2-bedroom condos go for $500,000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It is crazy.
And I know that Chicago is one of the cities in the US that is very expensive. So let me ask you this. Why did you choose to move to Mexico and not find a warmer and cheaper city in the US that do exist?
They do exist. Like a lot of places in Florida are very affordable,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't like the political climate.
Right.
A lot of the southern part of the United States is not very open-minded.
Right.
So I did consider actually moving to Miami or places like that with a lower cost of living. But ultimately, I think the thing that I realized wouldn't change is healthcare. And I was paying out of pocket for health insurance $500 a month.
I know, it's ridiculous. People don't realize. I know.
Right. And then when I would go to the doctor, or one thing I realized, if I went to the emergency room, even though I was paying that much a month for insurance, if I went to an emergency room, I would automatically incur $1,000 worth of debt.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, why am I paying
that kind of health insurance? In 2 months, You've already paid that. Why? Yeah.
Why do I have to pay more? Why do I every time I got my prescriptions, I had 2 prescriptions and my bill would be $60. I'm like, why do I have to pay anything? So here, once you get residency in Mexico, you can get really good health insurance here for about $50 a month.
Yeah.
And I have gone to the dentist now 4-5 times. I had surgery once, and so far I have only paid $1,000 out of pocket for 5 dental visits.
Right.
And that includes surgery.
Right. And I mean, to some of the people that are listening that are in like Turkey or Brazil, for example, that will still be a huge bill in their mind, but they don't realize in developed countries the price of dental work. I mean, for me, getting 1 filling done in Canada cost me 350 Canadian dollars for a filling.
Exactly.
And I had a student in Costa Rica at the time who was a dentist and said, I can give you an entire root canal for less than that.
Yes. I have assessed that the work I've had done so far would probably have set me back $4,000 to $6,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I've paid under $1,000. When I went to go get my prescriptions, I paid out of pocket for 3 prescriptions. I paid $12 US. That's not.
I know, it's like unheard of for you. I know.
Yeah.
So in Mexico, now you're in Mexico, you're in Cancun, you've just moved to a lovely apartment, townhouse. And so what are the things there that have made you go, oh my God, I made the right decision, apart from the dentist visit?
Right. Well, the weather, of course, but on top of that, the people here are so friendly, the locals as well as the expats, the people from America, Europe, etc. But the local people are so helpful and so open to communicating with strangers, and so helpful. And I just feel like people are happy here.
Right.
Right. And when I see a stranger on the street, not only do they say hello, but they also might engage you in conversation, or if you look lost, they will stop and help you if they can. So that to me has been fantastic. And I would have to say within 1 week of being here, I easily made 5 new friends.
Right.
And in a place like Chicago, that's very hard to do. People are
absolutely. I mean, yeah, they are. And I mean, it's a big city mentality as well. People kind of are stuck in their own lives, and because it's so expensive, they're just chasing time to make the dollars that they need to survive.
Yes, very much.
And
so.
I just want you to reiterate, just the last thing that I want to touch on is I want you to just speak to, you've spoken to me about it before, but just speak to the fact that Mexico is perceived to be extremely dangerous, but you come from Chicago. So just align those two for me, please.
My God. It's, first off, I looked up statistics per capita, and I would encourage most people to do this, of violent crime per capita. And the United States ranks way higher on the list than Mexico does, for starters. Gun crime in the United States is completely out of control. And to date, in the past 6 months, I have only heard of 3 gun-related crimes in the state of Quintana Roo, which is the state that I live in. And if you think about Chicago and Illinois, in the past 6 months, the amount of gun crime that has happened, I don't know first, but it's significantly
Look,
higher.
I mean, I think you probably get more than 3 a day in those areas.
Oh, yeah. 3 a day sounds about right in Chicago, yes. And the other thing, I don't understand why people think Mexico is unsafe. I walk down the street by myself all the time here, and I have never had a problem. I have never been harassed. I used to get harassed on the street at least once a week in Chicago, you know, whether it was the cat call or the hey baby or whatever.
Oh my God.
You know, that has never happened here.
Yeah.
I don't feel unsafe at all.
That's
and it's
awesome.
lovely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
One other thing I've noticed too, at least in Cancun, I have not seen any homeless people here. Not one homeless person. And I don't know what that's a result of.
Right.
But that also is very nice to see that, you know, maybe that means that people have the means here to at least have housing. Or
well, having traveled a lot and having spoken to a lot of people around the world, I would chalk it up to the fact that Mexico is more of a collectivist culture than an individualist culture, which means that if they are your family, you figure out how to make sure that they are okay. So generally, I would assume, it could be incorrect, that most Mexicans have family that are committed to helping them out some way or another to keep them off the streets.
Right. And it could also be an indicator that mental health services are more accessible or easier to come by. It could be so many things, but it really is remarkable. And you know, Cancun, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Cancun is a bustling urban place. It has almost 1 million people in it. So I'm not talking about a small, sleepy beach town here. And I expected to see street people, etc. And you know, and I'm really surprised that I haven't. It's just a completely different vibe here, and it's been lovely. I'm so happy. A lot of people say, you know, oh, the novelty will wear off at some point, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
But you know, look, in life in general, and as somebody who has done this multiple times, yes, at some point in time, the novelty of what is new does wear off, and the reality of this is my reality sinks in. At that point, however, if you're still happy, whilst there's no novelty because you've settled into something of a routine, number one, if you're happy, it really doesn't matter. And number two, if it is a new country for you, you will chase seeing new things. So even when the novelty of your current area wears off a bit, you'll be like, okay, I mean, you've got a car, which is great. Like, okay, well, let's go to Chichen Itza. Let's go down here. Let's go down to Bacalar for a weekend. Let's do this. Let's do this. The expats and the immigrants that I know spend a lot of time checking places out around them.
That's true. I wanted to say one of my favorite quotes. I'm not quoting verbatim, but I had asked there's a Facebook group for expats, and I had asked about refilling my antidepressant medication at a local pharmacy. And one of the guys said something to the effect that he said, oh yeah, well, I, really haven't had to take my antidepressants because Cancun is an antidepressant. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And I think that's Mexico in general, Look,
absolutely. I mean, most of the people that I spoke to just absolutely loved it down there. I mean, I spent most of my time in Playa del Carmen, and people were very happy when they had to go home. They didn't want to go home, and they were just like super, super happy with the choice that they'd made. So there's definitely something in it. And I really wanted to make this video because I've had a fair amount of students saying, why on earth, basically, would somebody from a developed country choose to live in a developing country?
Right. Yeah. And you know, the other thing, it's so interesting. I drove here from the United States. So which was insane, but I drove, you know, through Mexico, and I could not believe the quality of the roads. Like the freeway, or the tollway, I should say, was first world quality.
Right.
You know,
right.
The services here are, for the most part, first world quality.
Right.
And with a few exceptions, like when my internet goes out a lot, but you work around it, you know?
You do.
So
you do. Oh my God. Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.